So we're all hearing about the AI revolution, right? It's everywhere. But behind all the flashy headlines, there's a much bigger story, a story about power. And we're not just going to ask who's building the future of AI. The real question, the one that actually matters, is who owns it.
See, this whole thing is really about the difference between, say, earning a living and just owning the only road into town. The massive fortunes we're seeing in AI, they might not be a reward for some brilliant new invention. It might just be tribute, a toll paid to a new kind of digital landlord. So let's peel back the layers, let's look under the hood, and see what's really driving this gold rush.
Okay, so to really get our heads around what's happening here, we need a super simple analogy. It's one that's right at the heart of economics, really. It's all about the difference between being a baker and being a bridge owner.
So this really breaks down the two basic ways you can get rich. On one side, you've got the baker. She actually creates something new, right? She makes bread, something the town needs and wants. People are happy to pay her for it. That's profit. That's the engine of a healthy market, what Adam Smith was all about. But then you've got the bridge owner. He doesn't create anything at all. He just owns the only way to get to the market, and he charges everyone a toll to cross. See, that's not profit. That's rent. It's just a tribute you have to pay for access.
And that brings us right to the core question here. The giants of AI, are they the bakers creating new things for all of us? Or have they become the bridge owners, just controlling the digital highways of the 21st century? The answer? Well, it's a lot more complicated and honestly a little more disturbing than you might think.
Economists actually have a few names for this kind of power shift. And the argument is that we're not just entering some new phase of capitalism. No, we might be moving towards something that looks, well, a lot more like a medieval kingdom.
So the first big idea is called rentier capitalism. And what that means, really, is that our whole economy is shifting. It's less about making stuff and more about owning stuff. Specifically, owning the digital platforms, the intellectual property, the data, all the things that everyone else has no choice but to use.
But then, the economist Yanis Varoufakis, he takes this a giant step further. He calls it Techno-Feudalism. His argument is that when you log on to one of these big tech platforms, you're not a customer in a marketplace anymore. You've basically entered a private digital kingdom, a fiefdom. And in this kingdom, we're not customers, we're cloud serfs, and we're just providing the new digital lords with our most valuable resource, our data, for free.
Okay, so is this all just a cool-sounding theory, or is there actually evidence for this? Well, let's take a look at how the AI industry is actually built, and I want you to forget the idea of a competitive marketplace for a minute. Instead, I want you to picture a fortress, a giant castle in the cloud.
This castle has three main parts, right? First, you've got the foundation. This is the bedrock, the specialized GPU chips that all of AI is built on. Then, you've got the castle walls. These are the huge cloud data centers that house all those chips. And finally, inside the walls, that's where the magic happens, the powerful AI models themselves. So the big question is, who controls each part of this castle? All right, let's start at the very bottom with the foundation. Those specialized chips, the GPUs you need for AI, turns out they're almost completely controlled by just one company. Take a look at this. NVIDIA has just an insane 92% of the market. That's not competition. The very bedrock of AI is a monopoly. Full stop. Okay, so what about the castle walls? The cloud where all those chips actually live? Well, here we've got what's called a tight oligopoly. Just three companies, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, they control 2/3 of the entire global cloud market. Think about that. They are the landlords, and pretty much every company trying to do anything in AI has to pay them rent.
And this is where it gets really interesting. It's basically a closed loop. Because who's funding the biggest AI labs like OpenAI and Anthropic? You guessed it, the exact same companies that own the cloud. Microsoft, Amazon, Google. And a lot of times these huge multi-billion-dollar investments aren't even cash. They're just credits to use their own cloud services. So the money they invest goes right back into their own pockets. They're not just investing, they're creating a customer that's completely locked in.
And this is why nobody else can just go out and build their own castle. I mean, look at this number. The cost to train just one top-tier AI model, $191 million. Let that sink in. That's not to build a company. That's for a single training run of a single model. This isn't a game for startups in a garage anymore. This is a game for empires. The moat around this castle isn't filled with water,
It's filled with cash.
Now, if this whole strategy, controlling the essential infrastructure to dominate a market, if that sounds familiar, well, it should, because we have seen this exact playbook before, time and time again.
I mean, the parallels in history are just crystal clear. Think about Standard Oil. Rockefeller didn't just own the oil, he owned the pipelines and the refineries, the choke points. That's exactly what cloud compute is today. Or look at what happened in Cochabamba, Bolivia, where a private company took over the city's water supply. They controlled a resource essential for life itself. Aren't powerful AI models becoming essential for our economic life? And Monsanto, they used patented seeds to lock farmers in, forcing them to basically lease life. That's not so different from how API access works, forcing companies to pay over and over for intelligence they never get to own.
The lesson from all of this history is really simple, and it's a little scary. When a private company gets a monopoly on an essential resource, it's not just good business anymore. They stop being a service provider and they become a coercive power. They get to dictate the terms to absolutely everyone who depends on them.
Okay, so now we get to the part where this whole abstract economic argument becomes really, really personal. This is about what you think you own versus what these platforms actually control. And for me, this is the smoking gun of this entire story.
Look, we all operate under a pretty simple assumption, right? When you have a private conversation with an AI or you're working on something and you hit that delete button, you think it's gone. You think you're in control. Well, I'm here to tell you that that assumption, it's just an illusion.
Just read this quote. A U.S. federal court ordered OpenAI to preserve all ChatGPT conversations, indefinitely. And here's the kicker, including conversations that users had explicitly deleted. That's it. That's the ultimate proof. The delete button is a lie, a piece of cosmetic design. You are not the owner of your data. You are a tenant on the landlord's property, and all your private thoughts, your ideas, your conversations, they are now a permanent, searchable asset in someone else's portfolio forever.
So, wow. That revelation forces a huge question on all of us. If these foundational AI models are becoming an essential piece of our infrastructure, like a new kind of power grid for our minds and our economy, then how on earth should we govern it?
And right now, the debate is really splitting into two big camps. On one side, you have people saying, hey, this is a natural monopoly. We need to regulate it like a public utility, like water or electricity. The idea is that this would guarantee fair access for everyone and would actually let more people innovate on top of it. But then you have the other side. And they're saying, well, hold on. AI isn't a static pipe. It's a dynamic, fast-moving technology. They're worried that heavy-handed regulation would just stifle innovation, kill the golden goose, and hand the future over to global rivals.
And that leaves us with one final, absolutely critical question to think about. We are building a new kind of infrastructure here. It's not for roads or electricity. It's an infrastructure that's going to mediate our thoughts, our creativity, our entire economy. So, deciding who gets to control this new power grid of the mind and who benefits from it, that might just be the single biggest challenge of our lifetime.